Hello everyone, Happy New Year to all, and welcome back to our Tuppercast. This week's episode is going to be a bit short, just because it's been a really busy week, being with family for New Year's and all that. And it's going to be a bit of a different style. It's going to be completely unscripted and me just talking, as opposed to our past few episodes where they are at least semi-scripted, so that things kind of stay in check and aren't all over the place. So we'll see how this goes. But anyways, this one is going to be talking about a relatively small topic, which is fictives and Soulbonds. So, fictives are basically tulpas or headmates that are based off of fictional characters, and Max, my tulpa, was indeed one of them. She was based off a fictional character. Some of you may have recognized her already from the name and voice in previous podcasts, but for those that haven't, she is based off of Max, the protagonist from the video game Life is Strange. And so she is technically a fictive. She's based off of the character when she originally came to be and was kind of just a regular imaginary friend. I had originally made her as an imaginary friend just as a comfort character, someone to vent to when I was going through a really hard time, and I've talked about this in previous episodes, where she was just a really nice person to talk to, had a really sweet and soothing voice, and just somebody I could seek that comfort and solace in. And like I talked about in the previous episode, she had started out with the voice and the form of Max, not really so much the personality, because I had just basically been imagining her saying all the things that I would have wanted her to say when I was going through that time. But over time, she started ending up growing into her own thing, and now she is a completely independent tulpa who likes her own things, forged her own path, has gained new interests and all that. But I guess at the end of the day, she is still technically considered a fictive because she had been originally based on that character and still holds a lot of that character out of genuinely liking that character. Max, the character, is just really wholesome, really caring and sweet person, with a lot of interest in music and hobbies and stuff that both me and my tulpa have found to be really nice and enjoyable, and have genuinely grown on us over time, grown appreciation for it. So to that extent, yeah, she is still a fictive, I guess. But some other people's tulpas, they may start out as a particular fictional character and then grow to be something completely different, and that's the main differentiating factor of tulpas compared to Soulbonds, which we'll talk about in a bit. Which tulpas are their own person. They are free to be whatever they'd like to be. Max knows now that she is not Max Caulfield from the game. She is her own person. She likes the name, she likes the general look, the voice, and all that, but she's not her, and she's not bound to having to stay like her. I don't force that upon her, especially, and it's generally not ethical to force that upon tulpas. It's rather frowned upon to make them and then believe that they have to stick to a particular personality or appearance or anything like that. So she totally has the freedom to do whatever she wants, and she has changed in many different ways, but it stayed the same in a lot of different ways too. Some people's tulpas, though, they might have started out from one particular character and switched to a different one, or just changed aspects that made them a drastically different person from the character that they started with. They might be a different gender, they might have a different name or whatever now, and maybe still hold on to some elements of the character from when they were effective, but now are a drastically different person. So, as with everything with tulpamancy, it's a mileage varies for everybody. We're just really stating our experience on this. And on the other hand, you have Soulbonds, which I'm really putting this into sort of my own words here, because there seems to be a somewhat loose definition of Soulbonds, and Many people will describe what it is in a slightly different way. There isn't a technical definition to it, but the general consensus is that a soul bond is a headmate that has this sort of spiritual bond with a certain character, or hence the name soul bond. And they will have the personality and form of this certain character, but also the backstory and the genuine belief that they are this character from this universe or this source, whatever it may be. And that seems to be the main difference, and the difference that we believe draws the main line between a Tulpa that is just a fictive and a soul bond. For example, Max does not carry any memory or belief or any history, backstory, lore, whatever it is, from the game that her original character was based on. She knows that she is not that character, she is her own thing, whereas soul bonds generally believe that they are that character. They came to this world to for whatever purpose that it might be, to be with the host or to achieve any certain goal which may play into their backstory, and that backstory could have effects on them that don't usually affect Tulpas that don't hold on to their backstory. They may have past traumas and griefs and other negative aspects, but also possibly other positive aspects from their backstory as well. Basically, they're a lot more of an existing formed character and person that comes to be, and it seems that soul bonds generally are more likely to be walk-ins than fictives are. Fictives can generally be built on existing characters but slowly formed into Tulpas, and that's what we did. She was based on a character but did not start out as Tulpa, was just a imaginary friend that I had to manually imagine every single thing she was doing, and then eventually grew independence and sentience and started to be able to think on her own, speak on her own, as opposed to a walk-in, which is usually people who already have headmates or plurality experience will have another that just comes in and is already fully formed, has all the abilities, is vocal, can do visualization, imposition, all the skills they already know right away, just like that. And of the soul bonds out there, it seems that they are more common as walk-ins than fictives, but that has just been what we've seen so far. We haven't exactly spent that much time in the Tulpa community. It has been around for quite a long time now. We've only been here for about 2 years and so, whereas it goes back more than a decade of it even just being on the internet, being a group, a community of people online who have discussed their Tulpas and their processes with one another. And so, as Max has proven, a fictive is a totally valid and reasonable way to create a Tulpa. And a soul bond is a totally valid and reasonable way to have a headmate that you have a good connection with too. Neither of them are necessarily bad things. Some people I've personally seen on Tulpa subreddits and whatnot say that there's some sort of negative connotation when it comes to fictives because, they think that they are going to be stuck to a certain character and they're not going to have the independence to be able to form themselves and whatnot. And that is definitely not something that you should put on your Tulpa. And we've talked about this earlier in this podcast and especially in the previous podcast, where Tulpas should 100% be let to just be whoever they want to be, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else, of course. But there's nothing wrong with giving them a basis to start off with. If that is a fictional character or an original character that you came up with, or a real life another person, those are all totally okay, as long as, of course, you know what you're getting into, and as long as you're doing it responsibly. You need to give your Tulpa the freedom to express themselves, and if they end up, once they gain independence and sentience, if they end up not liking this character, if they don't like their appearance or voice or anything about them, they should totally have the freedom to change for it. However, don't feel like, as long as you're capable of allowing them that freedom, don't feel like you're causing some sort of burden to them by starting them off with a fictional character in terms of voice or form or anything like that. Any little bit helps, you know what I mean? And we don't have any personal experience with soul bonding. I actually had thought a few times back in the early days when Max had first started gaining independence. I had not known about Tulpas yet, and so in a way to kind of justify it to myself or explain it to myself, because I had just thought I was going insane at that point. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know that any of this was even possible, and I was afraid to look into it for like a couple months, almost a year. And during that time, I actually had kind of thought in a sort of somewhat coping way, but somewhat just sweet, mushy type way, that like this character that was my imaginary friend is now actually coming to life and really bonding with me, and maybe it's that character coming from that universe to bring happiness to me, and maybe so the stars aligned and we were just meant to be with each other and all that. But it wasn't until I actually looked into what it was that I understood that as cheesy and romantic of an explanation as that may be, she had, at the time that we had looked into it, already definitely grown into her own person. She was not that character anymore. She had never believed that she was that character from that universe that had come to this one, or carried over the backstory of that character. But that's not to say that we haven't heard of many people who are plural with soul bonds and have amazing bonds with them and a really good time as well, and they are doing just as well as the best of Tulpamancers. So it totally could work as well. We're not able to speak on their behalf because we don't actually have personal soul bonding experience, but on both the r/tulpas and the r/plural subreddits, I'm sure there are plenty of people on there where if you believe that you have a soul bond as opposed to a tulpa, or you just want more advice in regards to whether you should create a tulpa over trying to build a soul bond, there are many people on there that would be more than happy to share their experience with you and provide you with advice if that is what you seek. However, for me, mainly I just wanted to make this video to describe the differences between those two. We've had a few people ask about what the difference between Fictives and Soulbonds is, and if Max is technically a fictive, and had to explain it a lot back and forth. So hopefully this can be of help to one of those people someday if we have to link back to it. But the next few episodes of the podcast are going to be about a bit more general topics that are probably going to be of more interest to a lot more Tulpamancers, and especially up-and-coming people. So look forward to that. But until then, thank you so much for listening up until this point. If you're still here, I really appreciate you hanging around to listen to my rambling as always. And let me know what you think of this presentation as opposed to our old semi-scripted one. If this freestyle podcast sort of just rambling into the microphone flows better or sounds more natural than the previous way that we did it, where it was more laid out, then we can try and do more of our future episodes in this style instead. So yeah, whether this style sounds better to you or the previous style, feel free to let us know down in the comments below, as well as any feedback or future episode ideas that you may have. We are more than happy to take them in as always. Anyways, we are both wishing you the very best for 2025, and hopefully we will see you in the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.